Good afternoon and welcome. My name is Robin Wansley, and I am the chair of the Administration and Enterprise Oversight Committee. I am going to call to order our regular meeting scheduled for today, Monday, April 29th, 2024. And now I'll have the clerk call the roll.
Councilmember Vital.
Present.
Allison is absent. Cashman.
Present.
Chuktai is absent. Vice Chair Palmisano.
Present.
Chair Wansley.
Present.
We have 4 present.
Thank you, and let the record reflect that we do have quorum. There are 14 items on the consent agenda that I will now read for the public record. The first is a passage of resolution for gift acceptance from the Hattapole Coughing, get in there, of travel and lodging expenses. Number 2 is the passage of resolution for gift acceptance from the local Public Health Association of Minnesota for travel expenses. 3 is the passage of resolution for gift acceptance from the Big Cities Health Coalition of travel and lodging expenses. Number 4 is the passage of resolution for gift acceptance from the Minnesota Department of Health for travel expenses. 5 is the passage of resolution for the 2024 quarterly donations report. 6 is accepting the sole bid for liquid chlorine. 7 is accepting the low bid for Target Center Sanitary Replacement Phase 2. 8 is authorizing contract with Minneapolis Downtown Council for the Vibrant Downtown Storefronts Initiative. Number 9 is contracts with multiple vendors for the 2024 through 2027 pool of qualified art conservators. 10 is authorizing contracts with various organizations for partnership engagement fund projects. 11 is authorizing contract amendment with ICE Mortgage Technology, Inc. for loan administration software services. And 12 is authorizing contract amendment with John A. Dawson and Son, Inc. for Minneapolis Maintenance Facilities re-roofs project. 13 is authorizing contract amendment with Kevitt Excavating LLC for alley snow plowing. And then 14 is approving a legal settlement with Stephen Metal v. City of Minneapolis. Those are all the items on the consent agenda. Is there any items for that council members want to pull for a discussion? And I see Councilmember Cashman.
Thank you, Chair Wansley. I would like to pull number 8 for a brief question from staff for the Vibrant Storefronts, Downtown Storefronts Initiative.
Awesome. Thank you, Councilmember Cashman. And I will call the roll on all items on the consent agenda minus number 8. Also let the record reflect that we have now been joined by Councilmember Ellison. With that, all those in favor? Oh, sorry.
Hi,
See.
sorry.
Okay, and sorry. Also, Council Vice President. Didn't look fully to my rights. That said, all those in favor of items minus number 8, say aye.
Aye.
Those not in favor, say nay. All right, the ayes have it. With that, we will move on to the discussion part. But before then, we will ask if there's any staff who can speak to the Downtown Council Vibrant Storefront Initiative.
Greetings, Chair Wansley. I'm Meg McMahon. I'm the Planning Director with CPED. Happy to answer any questions.
Awesome. I'll pass it to Councilmember Cashman.
Thank you, Chair Wansley, and thanks, Director McMahon. I'm really excited to support this today, and just seeing how the Chameleon Shops Initiative has really supported a lot of small businesses in Ward 7 in downtown, both at the Skyway level and at the ground floor level. And I'm just wondering if you can give us a little taste of what this funding will be working on this year.
Sure, Chair Wansley, Councilmember Cashman, absolutely. So this is a contract with the Minneapolis Downtown Council, and really is an expansion of, as you said, the Chameleon Shops program, kind of beyond the current scope of that work. So it's really specifically focused on customized technical assistance for emerging entrepreneurs and businesses, specifically in downtown. It's customized in the sense that it really will meet those businesses where they're at in terms of support. So whether that's through marketing and branding or lease negotiations, there's the intention to bring on a real estate specialist who can help those businesses negotiate lease terms and move into spaces, dollars to help build out those spaces. And then beyond that, there's some additional gaps analysis, looking at what are the current vacancy rates. So the MDC will be doing some work with property owners to identify where there's vacancies and where we can make those connections, where there might be some gaps in terms of needs, to also look at the types of businesses and services that might be useful for downtown residents and employees. So it's a pretty broad-ranging program, and we hope to see this ongoing over the coming years, but this particular contract is just for this year, 1 year of services.
Thank you so much. And I just have one more follow-up question too, is how does this compare to funding levels from last year, if you know off the top of your head?
So this will be the first, Chair Wansley, Councilmember Cashman, so this will be the first year that the city has financially participated in this programming. So we've not historically participated. I will say there was a $75,000 pilot funding that was provided last year that kind of started the process of getting this work going. But this $400,000 will mark the first time the city's participated in this work.
Thank you. Excited to support that.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Meg. With that, I will also move that item for approval. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those not in favor? Okay. Those not in favor say nay. All right. Ayes have it. That has been advanced forward. Colleagues, next we have several items as receive and file, 15 being staff purchasing letters and joint purchases report for the first quarter of 2024, and then 16, 2024 contract awards or amendments for federal grant report for the first quarter of 2024. These are, again, standard quarterly reports, and there currently is no presentations from staff available, but staff are here for any questions that my colleagues might have. So just looking around and see if any of my colleagues would like to get in queue with questions about these. All right. Well, seeing no further discussion on those items, I will ask the clerk to file those reports. All right, we're breezing through here. Next on the discussion item, we have number 17, which is DTAP. It's going to be a presentation related to contracts with multiple vendors for the 2024 Developer Technical Assistance Program training and project assistance for real estate developers. I will invite staff to come up to the podium and introduce themselves and give a brief presentation on this item.
Good afternoon. My name is Bridget Higgins, and I'm a program coordinator with CPED's Economic Policy and Development Division. I'm here to present about the city's Developer Technical Assistance Program, or DTAP for short, which provides training and project support to emerging real estate developers in Minneapolis. The goals of the program are to support wealth building through real estate, diversify the pool of real estate developers doing projects in the city of Minneapolis, increase local ownership of residential and commercial property, and build capacity for developers doing small and mid-sized projects. Today, I'll review the program's history, our current resource offerings, and the types of participants we serve, as well as our 2024 program solicitation. DTAP started in 2016 by offering a basic 101 training about the real estate development process. Over the years, the city and our partners have continued to improve and refine the curriculum to best address the needs of emerging developers in Minneapolis. Over 600 entrepreneurs have gone through the city's Developer Technical Assistance Training Program to date. And in 2021, the small business team expanded DTAP to offer additional resources to be responsive to demand, an increase in demand attributed to unique economic conditions created by the pandemic and civil unrest. Today, DTAP offers group training, one-on-one project assistance, and resource navigation, the most significant expansion of our programming being our one-on-one technical assistance program, which offers project-specific support to emerging developers working across a wide variety of projects. The city partners with real estate experts who serve as advisors for emerging developers at all stages of the real estate development process. City staff work closely with program partners to provide training and facilitate connections with other city-sponsored programs, particularly the wide variety of financing tools offered for real estate development by the city. Successful program collaborations since our one-on-one program expansion began in 2022 include more than a dozen real estate more than a dozen sites awarded through the Minneapolis Homes program to DTAP participants, as well as a variety of examples of program participants receiving financing through CPED programs, including Minneapolis Homes, the city's NOAA Preservation Funds, the Ownership and Opportunity Funds, and the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. Overall, DTAP's investment in individualized technical assistance has been successful in helping emerging developers secure over $11 million of funding in grants and deferred loans from the city and other public agencies since May 2022. This amounts to approximately $22 secured for projects led by emerging developers for every $1 spent on technical assistance. Since the relaunch and expansion of DTAP in 2021, participants have been largely non-white and BIPOC identifying emerging developers. 81% of our training participants identify as non-white, and 94% of emerging developers receiving services through our one-on-one technical assistance program identify as non-white. And of those groups, 43 and 48% identify as non-white women or women of color, respectively. Earlier this year, the small business team worked with procurement to release a solicitation to identify vendors to lead our 2024 programming. This includes resources. Includes a request for proposals for both group training and opportunities in our one-on-one technical assistance program. We received over $1.2 million in funding requests for a budget of $400,000. Proposals were reviewed by a staff panel, including representatives who work across CPED, including team members from residential finance, business development, and the small business team. Ultimately, our review panel recommends 9 vendors to perform services this year, including group training and one-on-one technical assistance. The awards before you are the vendors who've been recommended due to their excellent track record of providing quality service to entrepreneurs, their deep experience in the real estate industry, and their alignment with program goals. With that, I will open it up to any additional questions about DTAP or the 2024 solicitation.
Thank you so much. I see Councilmember Cashman in queue for a question.
Thank you, Chair Wansley, and thanks for the presentation. I'm wondering how folks do access this technical assistance. What's the standard pathway that they get in touch with your department to be on a list to work with one of these providers?
We have an intake process through the city's website, and folks are able to complete a short form, which includes information about their particular project, and then they meet with staff to further dive into the details of their needs and be matched with an advisor who best can address those needs.
Thank you. And one additional question is, you mentioned ownership and opportunity funds and affordable housing trust fund recipients. There were a couple other qualifications that you mentioned that folks, like pathways for them. Are those kind of requirements for them to be eligible for this technical assistance?
No, those programs were mentioned to show that the technical assistance resources have supported folks in securing funds through other programs offered through CPED.
I see. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Oh, and I see Vice Chair Palmisano in queue.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for entertaining this as a topic of discussion. I did just want to show the public some of the work that we're doing on this. We've started, you also had suggested, we had a presentation not that long ago in Committee of the Whole, if I'm not mistaken, about our technical assistance program for businesses and some of the other work that CPED does to help businesses that are looking to start up in Minneapolis. So I just think this is an important way to grow our city, and that this is part of showing that it is available, is by making it known through these kinds of public meetings. What I didn't ask for was also a presentation on the Partnership Engagement Fund money. It totals almost $1 million. We have had conversations about this before in the last year, like in Public Safety Committee and that. So people are aware of those Partnership Engagement Fund dollars. I just think it's important that those programs stay competitive and that we get a lot of applicants in for them so we get the best potential programs funded. So thank you for this presentation.
Thank you.
Awesome. All right. I'm not seeing any other colleagues in queue. With that, I will move approval of this item. So all those in favor say aye. Aye. Those not in favor say nay. All right. The ayes have it, and that motion carries. Thank you so much. Next, we're moving to item number 18, which is on discussion. This is related to the Office of Community Safety, and specifically with a legislative, in response to a legislative directive from our February 12th AO meeting that I brought forward. I now will invite staff to introduce themselves and present on the item.
Good afternoon, Chair Wansley, Vice Chair Palmisano, Todd Barnett, the Commissioner of Community Safety. I'm here today to present on the legislative directive by Chair Wansley. A quick history on Neighborhood Safety Department, just to understand where we are today. I think most of you know that the work of crime prevention started probably back in the city around 2008, but the Office of Violence Prevention wasn't formally created until 2018. And soon after that, in 2022, the Office of Violence Prevention moved out of our health department to a standalone department, which was neighborhood safety. And so the reason I bring that up and why it's significant is that when that department moved to freestanding department, the services from the health department didn't move with it as far as administrative services, resources, or any formal leadership structure did not move with it. And so what you'll see later in the presentation is that you have a director of a division, but no real formal leadership structure. So that department moved late 2022. Director Nelson Brown was appointed in August of 2023. The significance of that is that the mayor's budget had already been submitted, and so Director Nelson Brown came in at a time when the budget process had already started. So within about a month of being on the job, Director Nelson Brown requested a risk assessment, and that assessment is currently being done through our audit department. She wanted this assessment to look at and assess the data management practices and procedures related to contractual compliances and outcomes. And so that was one of the things that she did when she first got here. Also, soon after that, in October, it started where she was meeting with an executive from Ryan's company. And that executive, I think, as most of you know, was on loan for Ryan's company. It was a gift. That didn't start until October 23. That executive was due to retire in December of 2023. So they worked together for about 3 months. And what they worked on pretty intensively was the organizational structure of neighborhood safety. I did have the opportunity to meet that executive before they left, because I came in October of 2023 as well. The best way, I think, to describe what I saw in neighborhood safety when I got there and talked to Director Nelson Brown it was really, in my view, more of a startup company with big ideas and big goals, but no real structure for sustainability or really structure for the capacity of what they were looking for. There's probably over 75 contracts in neighborhood safety, and probably I'm pretty sure it's well over $75 million that flows through neighborhood safety and contracts. In the backdrop of all of this, in November of 2023, as you know, the budget process has taken place, and I was before the budget committee as well. And I believe Chair Palmisano had asked a question back then, and I continued to talk about the fact that although there were amendments being made to initiate pilot programs and initiate new programming or to add FTEs to neighborhood safety, that we needed to assess neighborhood safety's capacity. I also at that time talked about the fact that I was talking to Director Nelson Brown about reorganizing neighborhood safety. The reasons back then that we sent a memo, I believe November 29th of 2023 to council asking specifically that we not have any new positions, was that I personally felt it would be fiscally irresponsible for us to accept new programming for funding or new positions without knowing the needs of neighborhood safety as it relates to sustainability, accountability, compliance, capacity, and transparency. The slide that you see right now before you is the structure of neighborhood safety when Director Nelson Brown took over in August of, I think she was appointed in August of 2023. This is what it looks like also today. You can see, if you compare this to any other department under the Office of Community Safety, you look at fire, you look at police, you look at 911, you look at emergency management. There's a structure there. And if you look at other departments throughout the enterprise, there's a structure there for leadership. There's some administrative resources there as well. So from talking to Director Nelson Brown, with the help of the executive from Ryan's company, what you'll see in the next slide is what we plan to bring forward to council for the future organizational structure of neighborhood safety, which I believe will help with this core functions of the department when you look at the contracting, the compliance, and programming. What you see before you in the blue, of course, is the current funded positions. In the green that you see are some associate directors positions, and I'll go through those in a second. But what you see in those director positions, and the reason they're green is because we want to bring forward a reclassification of those positions, and so we want to bring that to council. The orange, the executive aide position, would be one in which would be a new FTE. All of these positions, whether associate position to be reclassified or the executive aide position, all can be taken care of with the budget that neighborhood safety has for 2024 because we have savings from vacancies. So the deputy director of operations that you see there could help the director, Director Nelson Brown, with the day-to-day operations of the department, of course, in stepping in where the director is needed and cannot be there. You see those people in all of the other public safety departments where they have either assistant deputy chief or deputy chief in fire, in police, and 911 as well. The Associate Director of Finance, of course, would lead the essential contracting work for the departments to ensure financial policies are followed, track the department's available balances, and all of the programming that they have. I think probably the significance of that position and the next position that I'll talk about has to do with all of the contracts that are in neighborhood safety and all of the funding that flows through there. They're federal contracts, they're county, they're state, and local contracts, and they all are different sizes, whether it's a few $100s or several $1 million. The Associate Director of Compliance, of course, would lead the critical work of collecting quantitative and qualitative data for the department's numerous contracts. Of course, that's critical for evaluating the programs. Also, we need this as we try to meet the performance standards for the settlement agreement and the forthcoming consent decree. The Director of Programming, of course, would lead the different programming buckets and make sure those programs are working together and interacting in ways that are helpful to the enterprise. Lastly, the executive aide. When you look at any of the department heads under the Office of Community Safety, there is always an executive aide there to help with whether it's the chief or a director of one of those departments. And again, I just note that these associate positions in the executive aide position can be funded with the money that has been budgeted for 2024. This slide just kind of shows you how it would look in the future for, of course, the Department of Neighborhood Safety and its structure. The structure here, of course, also anticipate that for 2025 and 2026, additional staff positions could be added. But this here does provide that sustainability for this department, the transparency, the accountability, the compliance, and the capacity. There are 5 legislative directive questions. I'll go through each one of those. The first question, of course, you can see it says data and other relevant contextual information behind the 2024 budget amendment impact. Claims under NSD Department Director of Finance and Administration, Amendment 6, and the Senior Project Manager, Amendment number 4. In the memo that was sent to council I should say, November 29th of 2023, in there we listed impact, that this would be adding a position into NSD that are not being asked for at this time from myself and from Director Nelson Brown. Also in there, we said we need to listen to the staff experts and allow them time to assess the needs for NSD and also consider any additional recommendations. That's what we've done to this point by bringing forward the plan that we have. Also in that memo, it said that during the 2025-2026 budget process, the administration, specifically OCS and NSD, will bring forward a comprehensive budget request that details NSD's evolving staff needs, considering the department's then current structure and the community safety design and implementation process. For this reason, it's not recommended that the realignment proceed at this time. All of this is happening, excuse me, and just putting it all in perspective, this is happening late November, early December, when Director Nelson Brown has been, I think, here in the enterprise under 4 months. I think I was here for 6 weeks at this point. And like I said earlier, the mayor's budget had already been submitted. we, I believe at this point, are in a good place in which we've fleshed out the needs of neighborhood safety and where it needs to be going forward. The second question is about overview of current staffing or capacity challenges within Neighborhood Safety Department, including lines of work that may be currently supported by other departments or contracts that are related to executing administrative tasks. I said earlier that, of course, the Health Department did cover a lot of the administrative support functions here and some of the contract work. As I mentioned before, I think our biggest challenge for neighborhood safety is putting in controls in place where there's better oversight and accountability, especially as it relates to finance, compliance, and programming. I think the reclassification of those positions and the also request for an executive aide would do that. The next two questions, question number 3 is a summary of any recommendations that were given to the Office of Community Safety as a product of the Ryan Company's gift of loan executive services for organizational development related to the Minneapolis Safe and Thriving Community Report. During the 3 months that the executive aide was with us in the enterprise, they weren't here every day, of course, but they did have that opportunity, like I said earlier, to talk to Director Nelson Brown, have a forward-looking perspective on staffing plans for neighborhood safety, that structure that they didn't see, like myself, coming into the door. And so they worked with her with those fundamental structural requests that we're making to council here in the near future. Oh, sorry. Question number 4, fiscal analysis of any budget needs, including additional full-time employees required the neighborhood safety to successfully execute current responsibilities as well as repair infrastructure or capacity challenges. I think, again, it's worth noting that these positions of the deputy director and also the associate directors there, finance, compliance, and programming, would address the infrastructure needs of neighborhood safety to meet the standards that I think we all think need to be there in neighborhood safety. And then there was question 5. The mayor's expectation as it relates to transparency from his executive team, their duties as public servants, and the recourse for city council if executive officers hinder council's ability to provide effective oversight. And there, I think in response memo, I wrote in, just to reemphasize, the mayor's expectation for his cabinet members and executive leaders in the enterprise is to maintain an open and transparent communication with city council. He values, of course, collaboration and believes that effective communication between the cabinet, executive leaders, and the council is essential for good governance for the city of Minneapolis. Of course, he's in charge of the executive branch, and so if there's any hindrance that council members feel that is happening as far as providing them effective oversight, he's open to listening to them, or if you feel comfortable talking to his chief of staff. That's the end of my presentation. I stand for questions.
Thank you, Commissioner Barnett. I'm just gonna look. Oh, okay. No one besides myself. All right. Well, thank you so much, Commissioner Barnett. Just a couple comments and questions. So thank you for coming to present. I'm glad we were finally able to get this secured, though I am surprised to see that Director Nelson Brown was not able to present today, and knowing that there are still lots of questions to be answered. Also, I think it's important to let colleagues know too that some of my colleagues, including myself, have been made aware of many other concerning patterns within the Neighborhood Safety Department that confirms that there is not effective and supportive management happening within this crucial safety department. And some of these concerns include allegations of fraud and abuse. Some of them are related to the items in this LOD, and others are tangentially related, but the concerns are racking up faster than they can be addressed. So I want the public to know that while this presentation does not address or fall short of answering some of those dynamics, I do want to assure the public that a number of council members are taking action, including myself, to address what appears to be severe mismanagement of the Neighborhood Safety Department. And this has become a glaring problem that also I have met with the city auditor to actually request a formal investigation into fraud, waste, and abuse. I'm also working with the chair of Public Health and Safety as well as council leadership on appropriate next steps. And as you highlighted in regards to your response to the point 5 of the legislative directive, a number of us will be meeting with Mayor Fry this week to discuss the mismanagement of this department and what corrective steps can be immediately taken to address them. There's been a number of, corrective actions requested by, I know, a number of council members and myself, and they have not gone addressed. So I'm really looking forward to this meeting this week to hopefully make some headway. In light of that, the couple questions that I did have, you mentioned the piece, and actually going back to point 1 of the legislative directive where we talk about the discrepancies in the memo response around budget that basically discouraged council from supporting funding positions within NSD. At the end of 2023, I just want to note, again, you talked about in your response NSD's lack of capacity to take on council-initiated amendments and proposals. But was it also brought to your attention from staff about their lack of capacity to keep up with contract administration and other basic department functions that could hinder the success of that department?
At the time of the budget process, Chair Wansley, I had not met with staff. So I was not aware of that, that you're talking about now about staff capacity. I was not aware of that. But what I could see was there were several vacancies in neighborhood safety at the same time that there were those requests to add additional positions. So directly during that budget process, no, I did not have that information.
So, and this is, you did not consult with any NSD specific staff during that time?
At that point of the budget process, around the end of the end of November, beginning of December, Chair Wansley, I had only been here about 6 weeks, so my meetings at that point were around with the department heads, and I had not met with staff.
So you had met with Director Nelson Brown?
Yes, I had met with Director Nelson Brown.
And did she bring concerns to you about any lack of capacity at that time?
The concerns that Director Nelson Brown had, at least as my memory serves, about capacity itself, had a lot to do with the amount of work that she had taken on. And I'll explain it this way. If you take any of the other departments and you look at the chief of police or any other person, they were not having to deal with sort of individual day-to-day issues in their departments. They always had someone to lean on to take on some, certain things never even rose to them because they had a layer of managers or administration. So Director Nelson Brown's, I think at that point, really talked about all of the work that she was doing to the point that she felt like she was not, I think, fulfilling her director position responsibilities, that there was a lot of other things. There was no one to take on these other, like here I have these associate director positions. She's doing all of that work, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so that's where the discrepancies are, Commissioner Barnett.
Okay.
Because in the memo, that's the piece that, at least in the legislative directive, we also asked of, council was not only just bringing budget amendments for additional positions like the domestic violence navigators, they
Yep.
also brought forward positions to support with that capacity piece, to which we were then told, as reiterated in your memo, that there was no funding needed from council for those things.
That's correct. There's so many vacancies there. And I can tell you that in November of 2023, it was very difficult to figure out what truly the financial situation was for neighborhood safety. There's vacancies there. I couldn't tell you if you asked me in November what savings we had. I just couldn't tell. That's why I said it was fiscally irresponsible. There was no way to really pinpoint exactly what those savings were, although I knew that there were positions that had been vacant for various amounts of time. So there was savings there, but no true accounting of how much that was. And so I don't think neighborhood safety needed any financial help. And like you can see here, they're able to reclassify positions because they do have vacancy savings.
So I will name, and I'll follow up
Yep.
with the clerks on this. So I have seen an email correspondence where Director Nelson Brown explicitly shared with you and made you aware that they did need staff capacity and specifically did support council's amendment for specifically the deputy finance. And I'll work with the clerks to make sure that gets uploaded to LIMS. But I did want to at least name that, from my understanding, there was awareness that there was that ask for help. It wasn't around denying that support or, any conversations around repurposing. So I'm hopeful once you see that, maybe that might can provide some insights in our conversations on Thursday with Mayor Fry also present.
Okay.
And my next question, so the memo that you also shared with staff does not name John Jay College specifically as a stakeholder that you consulted with. You name HR, you name Ryan Companies, and it's interesting that they're not included since we technically have a technical assistance contract with them through December 2025. And when I read the contract, it did say that the technical assistance components include strategic advising, that will be structured with the specific intention of developing accountability processes, you mentioned that piece, and mechanisms that empower the GVI project manager and other operational leads to ensure fidelity of the implementation, as well as ongoing innovation in the pursuit of public safety. So a lot of the themes around the Safe and Thriving Communities report. So I did want to know, did you or your staff use the technical assistance and support given by John Jay when making decisions about the organizational structures that you've laid out in this presentation?
I did not personally talk to John Jay. I believe that contract, Chair Wansley, specifically have been used around GVI. I know what you're saying the contract states, but I believe that a lot of the work that was being done with John Jay's college was around GVI. I don't remember if at that time the contract had expired when I came in. I know that at some point that contract had expired. And I just, off the top of my head, I don't know what the date was.
So in the RCA, it says the contract was supposed to go through December 2025.
We are in the process right now having a contract with John Jay. So I would have to research that, Chair Wansley, and figure that out. I hear what you're saying, but I know we're in contract negotiations right now.
And also a follow-up on that, because part of the safety org chart that you've laid out, it does have a component about GVI, which is crucial. And
Yes.
again, if they were consulted at this time, because from my understanding, again, there was a contract based off of the RCA that was still active. And it would be good to know if they reviewed this to provide any technical assistance. So it seems like there's, for our clerks folks, there's 2 follow-up questions in terms of what is the status of the John Jay contract, and also if they have been involved in overviewing any components of the like what's been laid out in this presentation through the technical assistance that they've typically provided to NSD and OVP.
All right.
So those were the questions and comments that I had. I see Councilmember Ellison in queue.
Thank you, Chair Wansley. I don't have any questions. I do feel like because this is in front of us, I wanted to just name some of the concerns that I've had. You know, there's a lot of discussion that's being had, and we're trying to figure out what's what and how to make sure that this department has the support that it needs. You know, I was here in 2018 when this department was formed as OVP, and you know, I think that there's I can't speak to the underlying issues, the background stuff, right? Who was doing what, how the structures were, all that kind of stuff, right? The previous leaders of the department had a structure, and now we've got new leadership in that department. They're working it out. What I can speak to is what I hear out in the city, out in community, and I feel like what we had before, and we know that the previous leadership of the department was asking for some of this infrastructure, asking for some of the supports, and we're sort of, that can just kind of kept getting kicked, right? So I don't think any of us are surprised to hear, hey, when I got the department, it wasn't in the exact kind of right shape that it should have been. The previous leadership who created the department were also sort of ringing that bell and trying to warn that, you know, we need some more infrastructure here. So I'm not surprised to hear that there is more infrastructure that's needed. What I will say is that as a ragtag team, if you want to call it that, the previous leadership of the department had a lot of contracts out. You know, it's a new service. I'm not going to pretend like it was completely flawless, but you had presence, you had vendors that felt like they were respected and that they were wanted. You had, and we had a framework, a pedagogy that folks operated under that we understood. I don't care if it's blueprint approved or who we go with, but there should be a standard, and there was a standard. I feel like right now, I'm not confident that there's a standard. I don't know that there's a standard. I don't know that we're using blueprint approved. I don't know that we are still in relationship with NNSC. I don't know that we're still in relationship with John Jay. It's just question marks. And so even though we might be getting in a position to shore up some of that infrastructure, and run things on the back end more efficiently. On the front end, what community sees public facing, it feels like our vendors are frustrated. It feels like community is seeing this service even less than we were a couple of years ago, and we're all just sort of left to figure out why is that happening, right? So I don't want to get into the I think it can be easy to say like, oh, it was a mess when I got here, which is I don't think you're trying to say that, but I think there's a little bit of of the presentation that sounds a little bit like that, right? And so I'm just trying to I guess what I'm trying to express is I don't want to see genuine concerns from community, from council, go unaddressed, because I do feel like this is a really needed service in our city. Again, we started this work in 2018. I think it got supercharged after 2020 for obvious reasons. And in that sort of supercharging of this work, I think that I think the scope of service got really out of whack. I think there was a lot of mission creep. I think that was being dictated on the department as opposed to coming from the department. And I just want to see that we've got things moving smoothly. It doesn't feel like we're there right now, and it's hard to be confident that we're headed there. So it's not really a question, but it's on the agenda. We got the presentation, and I just wanted to sort of address some of what I've been hearing behind the scenes and address what can sometimes feel like a little bit of revisionism in terms of like how we got to this point and how the department was run before. Look, it's a new service. There's going to be hiccups, but those hiccups should be getting better, and it's hard to be confident that they are. So that's
Sure.
all I've got.
Chair Wansley, may I respond? Councilmember Ellison, for the staff in neighborhood safety, I'm not in any way trying to be negative about them at all or the department. They are some of the most hardworking people in the enterprise. I mean, the work that they're doing right now is amazing with being in a situation where they need more resources. And so they are working very hard. And I in no way wanted to cast any dispersions against the staff or any previous administration at all. My only point in any of my comments were that like you said, to council and to other people, no surprise to you about needing infrastructure. But that's what I'm trying to do with the help of Director Nelson Brown at this point.
Thank you, Councilmember Ellison. I think those were comments, and then I had put myself in queue, and then Councilmember Vital, and then Councilmember Cashman. I just wanted to do a follow-up on that memo too, because Councilmember Ellison raised several things of not only did prior staff repeatedly share before with this body about infrastructure needs that seem to not go addressed by the mayor's administration and previous leadership over OCS and maybe even currently now. There was also national partners that had set a standard for the work of OVP, which then became NSD. And it's not clear if we're currently in partnership with those national stakeholders as well as local stakeholders. Like last week, I saw Hennepin County do a press conference saying that they're moving forward with their GVI efforts independently of us, and they are a critical partner in this work. Like, how did we even get to that place? And council has not been made aware of how did we get to that place where we're losing a critical partner in this work. So I would also like to know, in addition to John Jay, what is our status of agreements? Because these are paid agreements, just like John Jay, but with NNSC, which is the National Network of, do you recall, Councilmember Ellison? Okay. But I do know the acronym is also National Office of Violence Prevention Network. So that is the name of it, as well as Blueprint. So again, our national partners that have been critical in shaping the work of our violence prevention strategies that have, like in the past, allowed us to be formally one of the most recognized, cities for this work, so much so we went to the White House pretty frequently to talk about the work that we're doing, and that doesn't seem to be the case. So I would like to know the status of those agreements and relationships with those partners. With that, I will move it to Councilmember Vitaw and then Councilmember Cashman.
Thank you, Chair Wansley. Just a couple quick comments and maybe a question. So Commissioner, thank you for the presentation. Also, I'm excited about the risk assessment or the audit. It's something that I asked for also because I think it's a great opportunity for us to reset the department. You know, we can look at where we've been and a future and where we need to go. And that doesn't mean we take out everything that's been done. But I think what I hear from community is that they want to see, you know, like they want the data or they want something that shows like the specifics of what the funded groups in this department are doing. And, you know, Councilmember Ellison, I appreciate, because you were here when this department was started, that you said that there's a standard to it, but I don't think that's how people feel who I represent. I get lots. Yeah, I understand, but I just think that, like, people that I talk to don't understand what the standard is, or like, I get how you can see that there was a standard, but the people that I talk to most regularly, they're like, wait, but like, it's not a standard if the head of a department says, we don't ask for documentation on like what the group is doing, right? Like, we don't have any type of recording of like, this is the outcomes of this is exactly what we did with the citizens of Minneapolis's tax dollars. So I agree that there is some, you know, some standards that this department was set up in, but I also think it was kind of messy when it got set up, and so there's a lot of confusion in community with what the standard is for this this department. I am myself confused about what's happening internally, and I've talked to you, and hopefully we'll continue to have conversations with you and staff about, I mean, like today there was, you know, the allegations of fraud, and I don't know what is the allegation of fraud. I've heard different things. I've heard, you know, like contracts being sent out to people who shouldn't have contracts, but I've also heard people who get contract funding misusing money. Like I've heard many different variations of what fraud is on both sides, internally and to our partners who we pay. So I really hope that this audit and this risk assessment is going to clear that up and let us know what's happening in this department, what has happened, and the future of it. Thank you.
Thank you. I got Councilmember Cashman, then Ellison, then Vice Chair Palmisano.
Thank you, Chair Wansley, and thank you, Commissioner. I'm really glad to see that there are several, you know, deputy director and associate director positions being created. And I really look forward to that, and I think that's a great advancement here. But I did want to ask as well about the audit, and you know, you mentioned $75 million and 75 vendors. I'm guessing those are estimates. Can you give a little bit more detail now? And also, will that information be included in the audit? And then finally, what's the timeline for that audit?
Chair Wansley, Vice Chair Palmisano, also Councilmember Cashman. The audit right now is ongoing. I don't know the actual timeline when that will be completed. I can't tell you what's in the audit. I have no idea what will be in the audit itself. What I can tell you when we look at the snapshots, let me back up, and maybe this will help. In February, I brought on who's now the Director of Administration for the Office of Community Safety. And so she has been helping with neighborhood safety, also doing work for Office of Community Safety. And when you take snapshots of neighborhood safety, I think you will see a range of contracts. And I think what you'll see, what you have to untangle, I would say, because that's the word she uses, some of these contracts lie in other departments. So there are some contracts related to violence prevention that aren't actually housed in neighborhood safety. And so she's untangling some of that work now to see what contracts at some point can we get over into neighborhood safety. So for instance, our health department commissioner has talked to me about that a couple of months ago, that they house some of those contracts and how do we move those over. So I say that to say that any time you have active contracts, you have contracts that might not be active, and that could range, I think, anywhere from 75 probably to 100. And when you look at those contracts, there are some that are really one event type of contracts, right? Or just ones that are a couple $100. But then you have larger contracts that need to be managed, like BCR, right? I mean, that's a large contract for someone to manage. So the scale of the work that neighborhood safety is doing is managing all of those, but also having to comply with federal, state, county, and some of the city requirements that are all different. And so that's some of the challenge that they have in dealing with the number of contracts that they see. And it is, I think when we look for 2023 to 2024, I think it's like $76 million, I think, that they have coming through neighborhood safety.
Thank you. Do you know if that would include neighborhood groups contracting with violence prevention groups using NRP funds?
What's NRP?
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I'll ask my colleagues about that.
All right.
All right, I have Councilmember Ellison back in queue.
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify one thing. Yeah, the department, especially after 2020, when I described the sort of ill-defined scope of service, the mission creep, all that kind of stuff, those things were happening, but they were happening from outside of the department. They were demands on the department that the department did not want to do, did not desire to do, did not ask to do. So when I say that there needs to be a standard, when I'm talking about Cure Violence and John Jay and the Blueprint Institute, things like crowd control, quasi-police work, all these things that the department was being asked to do kind of for several years fell outside of any of those standards that we had. So I 100% know and believe that community members are confused about what the mission of the department is, because once the department was created, there were demands to do work outside of their scope of service, and instead of saying no, they were trying to be good partners within the enterprise and say, okay, we'll do stuff that's outside of the scope of service. But if we've got contractors doing things that are outside of what we've taught them to do, how are we supposed to ask them to keep data on that? How are we supposed to ask them to keep data on crowd control, right? They're doing the work. They're out there. We got to pay them for the work that we're asking them to do, but it is outside of the scope of service. What I feel like should be happening is that now that we're out of crisis, right? Because you can always excuse, okay, look, we didn't do that. We didn't manage that the best. We asked people to do things that they didn't want to do because we were in crisis. But now that we're out of the crisis, what I feel like should be happening is that the lines around the scope of service of the department should be drawn firmly and never crossed again. Instead, I feel like the fact that the lines were crossed initially has become kind of an excuse for the scope of service to not be defined, or an excuse to abandon some of the pedagogy that the department should have been operating operating under from the beginning. And that makes me nervous because to me it starts to create a dynamic where, I'll use an analogy. If I buy a piece of furniture and there are instructions on how to assemble it, I can try to build it the way I think it should be built, but if it falls apart because I wasn't following the directions, that's on me. That's the position that I think that the city enterprise and the administration got in with the previous iteration of OVP. OVP was supposed to be assembled and built one way, and we did not follow directions. And I guess I'm asking, like, what's our commitment to, like, follow directions? And what I'm noticing is it feels like there's not that commitment. It feels like it's, oh, those things didn't work. When it's not that they didn't work, it's that we didn't do them. We demanded that the department do other things that we thought were more valuable. Crowd control comes to mind because there was a lot of that, and it absolutely violates the scope of service of OVP 100%. And so that's what I mean by, like, how do we make sure that we are maintaining a standard? I'm not saying that the standard was, that there was a mythical time when the standards were perfectly maintained. I'm saying that, like, how do we learn from that mistake and not learn the wrong lesson? And the wrong lesson to me would be, well, because we didn't do what we were supposed to do, let's continue to not do what we should do. That would be the wrong lesson to take from that time period. So that's all, and that's, just to clarify and, answer some of the questions that I think came up with Councilmember Vital, because I do appreciate her perspective. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Ellison. And just want to double check, Councilmember Vital back in queue? And also, are you back in queue, Councilmember Cashman? Okay.
Thank you for that, Councilmember Ellison. I definitely understand what you're saying, but I will say I'm one of the people who have voted against contracts in my ward, and it was because I was told we're using the cure violence model, and that is the only thing we're doing, and your ideas of what you think we should be doing is not a part of the work we're doing. And so I've even had budget amendments to get contracts for other groups to do things that my community wants, because I felt like there was things that, they just stuck to with these particular, not GVI contracts, but the violence interrupter contracts in particular. Like, there was a standard every single time from the moment I got down here to City Hall and asked about, like, well, shouldn't they be doing this? Or it was always no. That's not the models we're using. We need to come up with other programming and other funding streams, because this is the specific work they're gonna do, and, like, your ideas need to be taken somewhere else. So I don't have experience with the program changing over time. I have experience with, this is the group that is assigned to your ward, and this is what they do. And if you wanna do something else, you need to develop some different, work with the Office of Violence Prevention at the time or whomever to develop something different.
Thank you. I just put myself back in queue because, I think this is why I'm really looking forward to this meeting with the mayor's office, also getting follow-up about the status of our national partners, because I think there is this thing where, did we really do fidelity to the models themselves? And also, what is our status with the national partners around these standards? Did we, which I know previous leadership of OVP, which then became NSD, constantly asked us for additional resources and staffing and infrastructure support so that they could actually do their fidelity to these national standards, so that we can have consistent outcomes that show the progress and the effectiveness of this model. And there's been continuous interruptions. Some of those interruptions is, I'm going to name, not full buy-in from the administration around this model. And also, again, the lack of support for the model to be successful. And all of these things are putting us in a predicament where we don't have high standards of evaluation. regarding our NSD programming and department as a whole, it's not clear what is our proper processes as it pertains to, maintaining critical partnerships like those at the national level. And all of those things are necessary if we're really going to maintain and ensure that integrity is embedded into all of the services we provide in NSD. And, I think it's important that we have this presentation and continuous conversations because when we don't have those things, it then compromises our ability to do effective oversight, which could then lead to conditions for lawsuits, which we have had with NSD. And then the further, wasting of financial resources and then continuous damages to the city's credibility as it pertains to our, area of unarmed safety services. And all of this combined, leads to conditions of us then collectively undermining the importance of this work of building a comprehensive public safety system. So there is lots to be done around this. I'm glad that, again, meetings are going to be had. The city auditor will be supporting the work around a formal investigation and external investigation around what is happening. And then Councilmember Cashman, you mentioned the audit, which we did approve as part of the audits committee's plan last cycle. This is part of their work, is to continue doing assessments, risk assessments of, patterns and practices within NSD. And often, I just want to let folks know, those are technical recommendations. Those often are for operational corrective actions as opposed to proposals around policy when we do get those type of findings. But those are going to be necessary for us, again, to be able to do that effective oversight. So audit is absolutely at the table, and there is an ongoing one. But with that, I don't see anyone else in queue. So with that, I will ask the clerks to receive and file that presentation. Thank you, Commissioner Barnett, for presenting. With that, we have one last item on our agenda today. This is item number 19 related to GVI contract amendments, specifically with various vendors that are engaged in group violence intervention strategy work for the year of 2024. I don't think we have staff here to present, but I did want to just make the motion to forward these contracts without recommendation. And I want to be clear that I am incredibly grateful for each group that's on this list. In fact, it was a number of council members, including myself, who had to press NSD leadership because some of these contractors had not been paid for services that they have rendered. So I'm glad to see that they are on this list and that we are providing critical services to residents that significantly enhances safety in our city. But as we just saw with the last presentation, I know I have a lot of outstanding questions about how these contracts are being managed on the back end. And I won't have that clarity until we have that meeting with the mayor's office later this week. So I will move these contracts forward without recommendation. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those not in favor say nay. The ayes have it, and that motion carries. With that, we have completed all business on the agenda today. Thank you all, and enjoy the rest of your Monday.